Shikéédéé Donavan. Hello, everyone. My name is Donavan, and welcome to Infidelity. One of my earliest memories about a sexual orientation for me was in my bedroom. At the time, I was like 13, 14. And I remember being in my body like, what is this? Why am I feeling, pressure downstairs, things like that. And so something to know about me is I was assigned as male at birth. So what that means is biologically, I was born as a male and am supposed to mature and grow into adult as a male. And so for me, what that meant is that, going through puberty, going through adolescence, emerging into adulthood, I would have a male body. So some of my first experiences of sexuality was, experiencing an erection, experiencing quote unquote morning wood, things like that. And I remember the first time it happened to me and I was like freaking out because I feel like this was the moment when I was like, I'm not going to turn back from this. Like, this makes me a man. This makes me a grown up. And so because I had taken, an adolescence course in my junior high school, and they talked a lot about the changes that you're going to see, like, increased body hair, muscle growth, increased facial hair, things like that. And then also like the change of your voice is what they talked a lot about. And I'm going to let you know that when I was, before I even got to this place, I was one of the choir members for our church, and so I really liked singing a lot in like these higher notes that I used to have, and I really enjoyed that. And then when I hit puberty, my voice did change, and I will be real, it scared me because I thought to myself, like, I am not going to sound like a pretty woman. I'm not going to sound pretty no more. Like, how can I stop this? And I remember I would always like grab my fingers and just push in as hard as I could. And what that did for me was it sort of like gave me this sort of weird physical control on my own body that I don't necessarily have to grow an Adam's apple. And I mean, that's not going to be scientifically proven or not, but I feel like that was my way of controlling like how deep my voice could get. And so I did that often, and I did it a lot of times. And I remember one time I was even trying to make sure like I was still hitting the same registers of notes and like how high and how like shrilly like my voice can go. And I would spend time just screaming at the top of my voice at the loudest note I can get to. And my mom used to get mad at me, like, stop screaming like a girl. You're not a girl. Stop that. And I didn't know how to express it to her, but I didn't want that change to happen. And so I would always just push as much as I could and like loosen up or break cartilage, whatever I had to do to sort of like not fully change my voice, if that made sense. So I did that for a long time. And I feel like that might have gone to created like what my voice is now, which is sort of naturally high pitched in a way, but every once in a great while, like when I don't think about my voice, it will drop lower than I'm used to talking in and kind of expressing myself in. And so, and those are those weird times for myself that I get really hyper aware of like being in this body that I have. And so I'm bringing that up because like, I feel like, I was trying to express myself femininely at this age, and I was trying to do it in ways that I could control kind of how puberty and adolescence changes my life and my body. And needless to say is like this was around the time when my mom was going through some weird relationship stuff with several men, and she had like ended this 15-year relationship with her husband, and then started to date some people in the local area, and finally she met her current partner that she has. And I remember that I wasn't being supervised as much as I was a lot earlier in my life. Like my mom was around, but she wasn't like always around in a way that maybe didn't account for people coming in and out of my life. And so I think around, I would say 14, 15, like going into my junior year, sophomore, junior year of high school, there was this individual, and he's still on the reservation. And I know this because I saw him one of the last times I went to go home and visit. This individual is an uncle of mine, a distant uncle, and he would come around and like talk with my mom, and he would always give me this side glance, like kind of like just looking me over. And it was really strange for me because I never noticed anyone looking at me like that before. And then I think I realized like I like that attention, and I think he recognized that too. And so one day, I think like after maybe a couple handful of meetings that he had with my mom, he had convinced my mom that it would probably be good for him to introduce me to the sweat lodge, which is for Navajo boys is another way of how would you say it? Like a rite of passage from going from a boy to a man. And in our culture, we do have rites of passage for both men and women. And for women, I'm pretty familiar with just because of my participation in helping, running after the person who is who the ceremony is for, and then also being familiar with like their whole process of the kinalta, which is that passage to womanhood rite that they have to go through. So it's really extensive and tedious sort of thing. I've never seen the male version of it, but I heard that it happens. And so I remember like that kind of being in the story. And so my uncle, like this guy, my uncle, I want to say his name, but I don't want to say his name. And it's really strange for me right now. So just bear with me. He had invited me to go to the sweat lodge, and he told me like it would be myself and like 2-3 other people, like other young people that he knows that are trying to get involved with this. And it's like, so my mom definitely was like on board, and I was like, okay, whatever. So then like we get there, and we get there and no one else is there. It's just me and him. And I asked, like, where are they? And he's like, oh, no, they couldn't make it last minute, but I'm glad you're here, is what he said to me. And he started to talk to me in a way that was just, for me, like, it definitely was, like, alarms going off. But at the same time, like, I think there was a side of me that was, like, stay safe, protect yourself, do something like that. And it was really, like, no one was around. And he started talking about like the sweat lodge and like what it meant, and like all these traditional stories about why it's important for men to go through all this stuff. And finally, we get to this place where like he basically asks me to take my clothes off, and he takes his clothes off too. And then he makes up, I don't know if it's true, but he makes up the story about like when you're in a sweat lodge, you have to like keep it sacred. So like when a man's body or a young boy's body is sort of developing, biologically, yeah, they're reacting, like you get erections, this and that, but he's like in this space, like you're not allowed to do that. And so we ask you to, this is so weird. He's like, we ask you to tie up, your foreskin, is what he said. And I was just like, I don't understand this. And there's no adults around, by the way. There's no other adults, just him and I. We're naked, and he's telling me to do this thing. And I don't know what to do other than like take the little piece of rope thing he had, and I did it. And then like we go into the sweat lodge, and it's really dark in there, and it stinks like sweat, and it's like hot rocks, and he talks about like all this stuff going on. And then in the middle of all of it, he starts talking about like this is a like sweat is like a space for men to bond and to like just be there with each other without like kind of like taking away all these like social aspects of it. That's how I kind of saw it. And he started to talk a lot about how men help each other and stuff like that. And then eventually he goes into this weird place of like, my back is hurting, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have you help me, is what he said. And he's like, so I want you to suck in as much hot air as you can, and I'm gonna lay here, and I want you to blow it to a place that I'm in pain. And I remember thinking, like, is this real? Like, what the fuck is going on? And I was like, but I don't know, like, you know, and I was like, I don't know about this. I don't understand how this has anything to do with, like, a rites of passage or anything to be, like, in this sweat lodge, like, what he's supposedly saying is a sacred space. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm alone with this person, and that's all I know. And so, like, I follow his instructions, and he asks me to blow his lower back, whatever. And then, but it was just so strange. Like, it was hot, we were both sweaty, and like bodies on each other, and it was a really strange situation. There's more things that happen in this situation, but I don't want to talk about that just because it's just disgusting. So lo and behold, like it's done with. We get out of the sweat house, the sweat lodge, and I get dressed as fast as I could, and I demand that he takes me home. And that I felt like he lied to me, and he took advantage of that. And that's what happened. And I didn't know how to tell my mom what happened. I didn't tell her what happened. And so that's kind of what happened that first time. I was like 14-ish, and when I think about these times, like, I'm still there. It's happening to me. It's going on. And this is a time where I got really confused really fast. One, because, like, in my core, I knew this was wrong. Like, this is totally wrong. And then two is, like, I didn't know how to process it. Like I said, like, this is that age where I had no outlet. I had no resources to talk about these things. And so the next time, you know, he comes around and he's talking it up again, and he tries to invite my other brothers. And this time, like, I feel like my protection mode came on, and I said, no, like, you don't have to take them. Just take me, is what I said. And don't worry about them, is what I said. And I remember telling my little brother and my other brother that I don't want them around him, and that there's something strange about him, but I will go because he'll come around often, is what was going on too. And so I remember going multiple times to Sweat Lodge with him and kind of experiencing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I think I got to a place where I kind of strangely liked all this that was going on, this like behind the scenes secret stuff going on, to the point like where I was asking and even begging to go see him. And it was really messed up. It was really messed up that I started to internalize that this was what love was, and that this is what protection was, and that this is how, you know, this person wants to relate to me. And I didn't know the full background story like before I got caught up in like these emotions and stuff. But I finally found out that this man went to prison, that he molested his niece, I believe, and she was young. Little child, very little child, had sort of done something like penetrated her or something like that, sent her to the hospital. And he got arrested for that and went to prison for it. And I learned that this was the news I finally got to hear. And I was angry, and I was so upset that this person was able to manipulate me, was able to deceive me, was able to coerce me into, by using traditional ways of doing things, by doing the sweat lodge with him, that he was able to make me come to this vulnerable place, and think that's okay to be in that space with him. It was such an interesting time for me because I think I didn't have no one to talk to about it. And what scared me the most is that he would get to my other siblings and that he would do the same thing to them. That's what I was most scared of, and that's why I kept going back and doing what I needed to do with him. And it even got to the point, like, by the time I was, like, finishing high school, he was like, what do you want for graduation? And, like, what do you want for gifts and stuff like that? And he was trying to, like, maintain this relationship beyond school and stuff like that. And I just, it was just so gross. And I remember, like, one night, like, my family had gotten together and we were playing bingo. And, like, he had showed up, and then, like, I took off with him. And we were sitting out, like, about maybe 3 miles east of my grandmother's homestead in White Cone. And we were sitting there on the hill in the dark, and he was, like, talking about how much he missed me and how he makes him feel, and stuff like that. And I just got really angry at him, and, like, basically I got really angry, and I said, I'm so mad. Like, I can't put the words the way you make me feel, is what I said. And I said, like, you don't understand what I'm going through right now, because I have this connection to be with you or by you, but I hate you so much. You know, I hate you to the core. You remind me of, you know, if I did finally meet my dad, like, I would be so grossed out because he had the same name as my dad. And, like, I was like, and this has gone on for a couple of years, and I don't understand, like, why I'm still here doing this with you. And he turned into this, like, really weird victim, like, started crying. He's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't tell nobody. And oh my gosh, that was such a, I think from that point I realized what happened to me, and that I was being manipulated and molested for 2 years, all under, like, the nose of my mom and things like that. There are other instances where he would come over to my mom's house, and he would go to my room, and he would sleep over. Basically what that meant was we'd lock the door, and he'd make me get undressed, and we would lay there together. And that's this fucked up relationship we had for almost 2 years. And the thing about it was, like, I couldn't tell nobody. I didn't know how to tell anybody. And if I did tell anybody, I think I already had this narrative in my head, like, who's going to believe me? And so finally I got really angry with him, and I said, I don't ever want to see you again. Don't you dare come near me again. And I threatened. I was like, I will tell on you, and I'll make sure you go to prison. And I will make sure that you don't do this to anybody else in my family or anybody else on this reservation. And that's what I threatened. And that's how I got out of that relationship with this person. And he is definitely a registered sex offender in this area, this region. And still, like I said, I can't understand why I can't say it. Why I can't just address it and, like, call it out as is. It's still very real, and every day I think about the victims that he's probably still victimizing, and that I'm only a number of a handful or even a community worth of people he's done this to. And the thing about it too is like, when you start to recognize this type of treatment, you start to see it in other places too. And so my family, there is a lot of history of that going on. And I think a lot of us who are on the receiving end of being victims of child molestation, child abuse, and sexual assault, things like that, that we don't necessarily have the strength to go through with that because we've already sort of swallowed the pill. We've let it linger too long. And we're still doing a lot of work to heal through that. And I think, and I personally believe there's going to be a space and a time that we're able to say and declare those names, and that they can finally get the justice that we deserve as being these victims of sexual violence and abuse. And that's what I truly believe. So that's kind of what happened to me between 14 and 15. And some of the things that happened to me in college that relate to this is, one, it created a sense of that I'm not worth anything. Anyone can do anything they want to my body, and I can't have anything to say about that. They get to determine how I have sex. They get to determine whether I enjoy it or not. And that's kind of like what I went through. And for a long time, even leading up to like the first time I considered losing my virginity, it was because I, kind of created this dad or older man complex, and I allowed this person to do this to me, and I didn't care anymore. And I will say that even by the time I finally turned 18 and was able to like legally say yes and consent to sexual relationships, I didn't have no sense of care or need to protect myself. I didn't have no self-worth. I if anything, like the pain or like the things being done there were better than dealing with like the actual like fallout of what was going on in my life. It was better to experience that than to reflect on all the crap that I was going through, K through 12. And I had belittled myself so much that it didn't even matter anymore. And it really put me in this place where not only was I now afraid that other people were getting harmed, but now I felt responsible for that. And I still sit with that. And I still sit with like the fact that this person's still out there in the community doing whatever they want. And that every time I'm in spaces that he's into, I'm talked after by my parents or my family that you need to maintain a relationship. You need to say hello to him. You need to greet him. And I get so quiet and I get so angry, and I leave the room immediately. And the thing about it is that it's because like they didn't know what was going on, and they suspected, but they didn't do anything about it. And I remember I had a conversation with my mom about this years later, that what she said to me was like, I thought something was going on, but if I brought it up, I thought you would get mad at me, is what she said to me. And I cried so much because I was just like, how do you allow your child, whether it's under suspicion or not, to go through that? How do you even justify like, oh, my child doesn't get mad at me, so I don't want to bring it up type of thing? Like, I think that was bullshit, and I think that's such a crappy way to be a parent, but that's what happened. And I knew I had some other relatives that knew about this history of this individual and did discuss it with me, and we're very concerned that this person was coming around our home often, but I had the secret that it was happening and that I was involved with that. And somehow, some strange way, I was liking it too. And I think a lot of it came down to that attention seeking. And for me, that's kind of like what I sit with today a lot of the times. And it resonates in a lot of my relationships that I created over time, where I don't give a shit about myself and I allow the other person to decide what happiness looks like for me, decide what I enjoy when it comes to sexual expression or actions and things like that. And I even got to the point where too, like where it was my goal to go through as many people as I needed to and be as sexual as much as I wanted to. Even to the point, like, even where my doctor was telling me, like, you need to get on PrEP, you need to take steps to protect yourself from diseases that you can't get rid of. And I remember thinking about all those sort of moments where I'm just like, man, I'm just fucked up because of all this child abuse and sexual violence that I had experienced. And the thing about it was, like, when you don't resolve that, when you don't talk about it, it's just a poison that's just slowly killing you. And it's like when a tree gets an infection and it's just, trying to thrive, but it's just slowly withering away. That's what it felt like. Not physically, obviously I'm getting older, like I was heading into my 20s, and also spiritually though, or like inside, like my inner self, like I knew I was just destroyed, and I didn't know what else to do. And for me, that often expressed into like hypersexualization. So like I started to like I said, meet more people than I needed to. It was a goal for me to sort of conquer or be conquered as much as possible. And even it came down to like the time like I started to explore what it was like to be a trans person. That's like even before I became a trans person, or I started to identify as a trans person, is that these like internal boxes and identities that I existed in started to become very separate. And I think I started to visit each one in a different way. And I think my trans box was sort of put in the back somewhere where like I didn't want to unlock it because of that childhood of like knowing like having that out would be very dangerous. So I allowed all these other experiences in my life to sort of like block and shield myself from a lot of the pain and things that I needed to sort of work through. Something that I will remember though, out of sort of just declaring it or saying that I am a victim of child molestation, I'm a victim of sexual abuse, harassment, assault, is that when you're trying to work toward understanding what self-worth is, understanding that you're worthy and you deserve love, it's a really hard journey to get there. Because not only are you seeking love in like physical attraction and attention and touch, you often I often didn't want to know if they wanted to take care of me as far as like maybe being in a really positive relationship or getting married one day, things like that. I just knew that I was disposable and that they could just use me up and push me to the side, things like that. So that's kind of what happened there too. And there was even a time like, in my 20s too, where I had this person that I really grew to trust. And one evening when we were both, drunk and inebriated, he took advantage of that situation. And he thought it was sex, but I definitely thought it was rape because I didn't consent on it. And he just immediately started doing what he wanted to do with me. And I got injured from that. And from that injury, I still have to be very careful with the way I can do anything when it comes to sex. And this person just sort of like came and went and gone. And it took me almost like a couple months up to a year to finally like cry on my shoulders of my good friends at the time. Like, this is what happened to me. I was raped, I was assaulted, and I don't know what to do about it because one, it's not like the traditional woman being raped and assaulted and being asked like, are you sure this is real, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I felt like because I was assigned male at birth, and also I'm a trans person, that a person living with a penis or just having your anus, you can't get raped, like it doesn't exist that way. But I definitely was being going through all that, since 14 until like my 20s, when was the last time I really put my foot down to be like, no, I won't be a victim of that no more, and I won't let anyone do that to me no more. And it was a long journey that I had to do myself, because again, I don't know a lot of stories from other LGBTQ or two-spirit relatives that had those experiences, nor was I even prepared to or willing to ask others if they had that experience. I feel like that's just too personal and too intimate sometimes. And I don't want to know all that about people too, because I'm already dealing with all my stuff too. So that's kind of where I am with like how like child molestation and abuse and assault kind of impacted me and influenced the way I created relationships with men growing up, and then heading into my 20s. And I'm leaving a lot of those stories that I usually tell people about, like with my college and what happened in my mid 20s when I realized that I'm a trans woman, is because like my experiences are sort of the mechanisms that allowed me to push a lot of my identity out of the way, so that way to protect myself and to keep me more, I would say, able to live day to day and be able to exist and be okay with myself. And I think that's what's happened. And I'm now in a place where I can actually talk about that and articulate like what was going on and how things flowed and how information left and came in and came out, and my relationships with people. And my experiences when it came to molestation and stuff has really helped me as far as being able to finally talk about it to people, really talk about it with my relatives, although that's not always the best one, because we're all dealing with drama and like the trauma in different ways, and it sits in our body and it sits within ourselves in different ways. And then a lot of us aren't ready to confront what's going on, what had happened. And a lot of us are still experiencing that, like, your parents or your relatives don't believe it's true. They don't want to believe that what happened to you really happened, because I think they know it was their responsibility to protect you and to take care of you, but they didn't do that for you. And that's where a lot of those deep-rooted, like, I love my mom, but I really don't like the way, parenting happened there. I really don't like the way she didn't protect me in this instant. Like, all those, like, kind of, like, back and forth things happen with me. Like, even me in particular, my relationship with my mom is just so rocky sometimes because of the things I do want to talk about, the things I want to process, but she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't meet me there. And I don't think she herself has the capacity to actually hold space for me like that. So for me, for a long time, I've been sitting in silence, because I can't heal, and I can't go past this journey without knowing, like, these things need to happen. I deserve justice. I deserve being believed. I deserve being protected. I deserve to be loved. And even though, like, I'm in a really wonderful relationship and I'm married right now with my beautiful partner, these things still have deep roots, and that's something I'm probably gonna have to work on for the rest of my life too. And the more that my family and the more that my siblings and stuff, that we can't talk about it, or we deny the space to talk about it, to address it, we're always going to be there. And I think that's also what contributes to the way we relate to each other, the way we show up for each other. And a lot of it is just full-on avoidance of conflict, full-on avoidance of, addressing what really happened and moving forward and healing together. And I believe, like, we'll get there one day, but right now a lot of that work is on ourselves individually, which I believe it needs to happen. And so that's kind of where I'm at with this space when it came to this part of me. And when I'm talking a little bit more about, like, the hypersexualization, like, I will share that, when I go out to bars, or like the gay bars with my friends and stuff, like, I would hyperfeminize myself, like, go on full, like, fish is what they call it, like, looking fully like overdone woman, this and that, to attract, a man that's willing to take me and accept me at that time, that moment, even under the influence of alcohol. I didn't care. I just needed to feel loved. I needed to feel connection. I needed to feel that someone was willing to have sex with me, type of thing. And I would get dolled up as much as I could. And that's just sort of like the way I wanted to do that. And it's so strange for me to talk about that because I didn't think that was the reason why I was doing that. I thought it was just like, oh, you know, this is how to be a woman. Oh, this is how it means to be feminine. Like, this is what you do. And now I reflect back on it, and it's because it's the way I learned to express myself. It's the way I learned to lure and entice and to manipulate and to get others to like me. And that's something I learned, and it's really gross. And it's weird that I can say it out loud that it's how it happened. But that's also what created kind of who I am too. And that's a lot of stuff I had to deal with and work on. And that's kind of the lifelong impacts it's having on me currently too. So, you know, I feel like sometimes when you're, you know, getting all dolled up, putting your makeup on and putting on your cutest, sexiest outfit, that sometimes that's often just like an outer layer that you're willing to just express, because on the inside you feel so ugly, you feel so empty, you feel like you're a void, you feel like you see your scars, you see all the stuff that you're carrying, but no one else gets to see that, and you get to sit in all that. I mean, I could say that, yeah, I look great now, but when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see a pretty face. I don't see a beautiful body. I often see this person stuck in like childhood and teen years and early years. I see this person stuck there trying so hard to be okay. And you know, sometimes when I look at myself, I see bruises on my body. I see like hand chokings, my neck. I see, you know, like smeared up makeup and all this different things. And that's what I look at when I'm in the mirror. And I'm wearing like really skimpy outfits. And at the same time, like a lot of that is just, it's in the mirror that I see, and it's also a side of my identity that not everyone gets to see. And when I express it, I feel like people jump on board right away to say like, oh no, but you're so beautiful and you look so great and you don't look like you're sick, or you don't look like, you know, you're someone that went through, you know, molestation, child abuse, harassment, assault. You know, you look like you have everything put together. You know, you're a successful person. And it's really interesting that they can say all that, because that's what I pushed out there, you know, and that's what I want people to see most about me. But I don't want them to see anything back here, you know, like it can be really tough to sit with myself sometimes, and it can get really dark and so depressing. And there are days like I don't even want to get up and do my work. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to deal with men. I don't want to deal with anyone. And so like that's kind of like what I go through kind of like on a day-to-day basis. And it's something that I'm going to have to carry for a long time. And it's something that I don't need others to carry for me or to hold space for all the time, but also know that we all approach healing and restoration in different ways. And for me, I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job identifying my needs and identifying where and how I can navigate resources to help me get to where I need to go. And that's the most important thing for me right now. And that, you know, this episode is more or less just to say that I went through these experiences, and that is a lifelong sort of effect on me and how I see the world and how I show up in the world, and also how I navigate. And it's also for me a space to say that, you know, healing and getting help is a long journey too, and it takes time to get there also. And for me, I'm so happy that I was able to do a lot of the heavy lifting and the work when I did it, because I was able to finally call out stuff and really name what continues to hurt me and what really continues to be really hard to deal with. And some days I just kind of table it, and then other days I'll come back to it and I'll start working through it. And one of the most hurtful things that anyone can say to me, especially like my mom, is like, why are you still bringing that up? Like, I thought we already talked about that. I thought that's done with. It's like, no, this is an everyday living occurrence for me. And if you don't understand that, I don't know how else to make it that real for you, you know? And so I think that sometimes just acknowledging that even though someone's smiling, some pretty face out there, some beautiful person, however you might look at them, they might be carrying a lot of crap with them. And I'm just saying that I might put on a great smile all the time, but there's some scary skeletons in the room. And I just want to say, like, I'm working on it. And I'm very happy that my community, that my chosen family that I've learned to love and respect and trust, they allow me the space to do that. And they also know that my healing journey, they're on it with me, because I need them as my support. I need to lean in with them, and I need to talk about these things. There might be heavy days, but most time we're able to just talk about it and just sort of check in on each other about it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. And until next time, I'll see you later. Ahiahat.